Hello, it's poetry time again, and today I'm going to read a poem that is a bit long. It's somewhat of a sad poem as well. So, if it's a poem that you're not in the mood to hear today, I can understand that. You may want to save it for another day. But if you feel up to it, perhaps it's something we can learn from. The title of the poem is The Man with No Family to Take Leave of, and it's written by a Chinese poet named Du Fu in the 8th century. And so the title of the poem basically means the man who has no one to say goodbye to. The setting of the poem is a time of war, and the person who is speaking in the poem has come back from a battle in war in which he and his side has lost. He returns to basically an empty village. There are a few people living there, but most of the people who were once there are long gone. And so he's left largely alone in the town, knowing that he could be called up for war again, and realizing that if he does go to war, he has nobody left to say goodbye to. Some of the language that we'll see in the poem includes some vocabulary. I'll look at that right now. Desolation refers to being empty of people, or something that is depressingly empty is desolate. Mire refers to muck, swamp mud, filth, basically just the sticky mud on the ground. If someone or something is feeble, it's weak, so he will refer to the sun as feeble, implying that, even nature feels the sadness of the situation. The sun itself has become weak with its light. To grieve is to express sadness for someone or something that you have lost. And here he is grieving for the loss of his mother. And we're going to see the verb bore. Bore in this case is the past tense of bear, meaning to carry or to give birth to. So he's remembering that his mother gave birth to him, but also took care of him and carried him through life at some time. There are also some interesting phrases and lines that may be hard to understand until we discuss them. So let me go through a few of them quickly. When he returns to the village, there are wild animals about. His town is going back to wilderness. And one of the animals he refers to as a raccoon dog. It's basically a raccoon-like animal. It's related to a fox, but it has raccoon patterns on its face. And when he says the roosting bird loves his old branch, it's important to know at this point he's not talking about a bird now. He's talking about himself. As a metaphor, he's comparing himself to a bird that always comes back to the same place to nest. And he, even though there's nothing much to come back to, feels the need that he must return back to his home village. So he is the roosting bird who loves his old branch. In the spring, he says he must shoulder the hoe, and he means basically do the farm work. And he's making that as an example of one of the things that a farmer would do, carry the hoe out to the field. Okay? To practice the big drum, in this case, he's talking about being called up for military service where he might be part of a signal corps. The signal corps, strikes drums to signal the troops as to which direction to go. Basically, they give commands through sounds, through horns and drums. Okay? So when he says he's being called to practice the big drum, he realizes this means he may be deployed back to war again. When he says near or far are all one to me, if I say it's all one to me, it means it doesn't matter to me. This is as good as that. It's all the same, right? So he's basically saying now that his village is virtually empty, staying close to home or far from home doesn't have much difference. He hardly has a home left at all. Okay? So I'll read through the poem, and then if there's time, I think I will read it again for some details. But first time, I'm just going to go without a pause. And here we go. Ever since Tianbao, silence and desolation. Fields and sheds, mere masses of pigweed and bramble. My village, 100 households or more, in these troubled times scattered east and west. Not a word from those still living, the dead all gone to dust and mire. I was on the side that lost the battle, came home, looked for the old paths, so long on the road to find empty lanes, sun grown feeble, pain and sorrow in the air. All I meet are foxes and raccoon dogs. Fur on end, they snarl at me in anger. For neighbors on four sides, who do I have? One or two aging widows. But the roosting bird loves his old branch. How reject it, narrow perch though it is? Come spring, I shoulder the hoe alone. In evening sun, once more pour water on the fields. Local officials know I'm back. They call me in, order me to practice the big drum. Maybe they'll assign me to duty in this province, but I've no wife, no one to take my hand. Posted nearby, I'm one man all alone. Sent to a far-off assignment, more lost than ever. But house and village a wilderness now, near or far are all one to me. And always I grieve for my mother, sick so long, 5 years left buried in a mere ditch of a grave. She bore me, but I hadn't the strength to care for her. To the end, both of us breathed bitter sighs. A living man, but no family to take leave of. How can you call me a proper human being? So, I will do a close read of this so we can understand some of the lines. And I think it helps to realize, of course, in every time, in every culture, family is very important. I think it's especially important in this time and place to realize that without family, you basically have no support. Family was extremely important, and it was a very strong cultural value that we have to honor and respect and care for our elders, but also our ancestors, those who have died. So it's kind of a mark of shame on him that he hasn't been able to provide a good grave for his mother. Also, being a man who could not get a wife is tragic for him as well. Okay, so line by line. Just a moment, I need some water. Ever since Tian Bao, so he's talking about the time period in which the An Lushan rebellion was a violent war that was tearing the country apart. Okay, so he's referring to a time of battle. Ever since Tian Bao, silence and desolation. The village has become quiet and empty. Fields and sheds, mere masses of pigweed and bramble. So the town is being grown over by weeds. My village, 100 households or more, in these troubled times scattered east and west. So the people of the village have gone here and there. They've all left. Not a word from those still living. So some of those who went to war simply never came back because they saw they had nothing to come back to. Maybe they're refugees. Maybe they've moved to another province. The dead all gone to dust and mire. They've all basically been abandoned in the ground. No real opportunity to give them a proper grave. I was on the side that lost the battle. Came home, looked for the old paths, so long on the road to find empty lanes, sun grown feeble, pain and sorrow in the air. So to him, in sadness, even the natural world has become sad and weak. All I meet are foxes and raccoon dogs, wild animals. Fur on end, they snarl at me in anger. For neighbors on four sides, who do I have? One or two aging widows. So his only neighbors basically are older women whose husbands have died in the war. There's no one for him to marry. There are no men, not many men. Not many have survived and returned. But the roosting bird loves his old branch. How reject it, narrow perch though it is. So even though my life here is very limited, still I had to come back. Come spring, I shoulder the hoe alone. I go out to the fields to do the farm work alone. In evening sun, once more, pour water on the fields. Local officials know I'm back. They call me in, order me to practice the big drum. So now he knows government officials still have power. They can still command him to get ready, maybe to go to another military post. Maybe they'll assign me to duty in this province. But still, I've no wife, no one to take my hand. Posted nearby, I'm one man all alone. So he realizes being posted near his village doesn't make much difference because he's still alone, he has nothing. Sent to far off assignment, more lost than ever. So if he's sent away, he has nothing, including even the last vestiges of his village. But house and village or wilderness now, near or far, are all one to me. It makes very little difference. And always I grieve for my mother, sick so long, 5 years left buried in a mere ditch of a grave. She bore me, but I hadn't the strength to care for her. To the end, both of us breathed bitter sighs. So he and his mother lived very difficult lives. A living man, but no family to take leave of. How can you call me a proper human being? So he feels that this is not a proper condition for a person to live, having lost everything. So most of us have not been in China. Most of us have not been to war, but perhaps there are some universal feelings here about the importance of town, family, the things that we value, and how sad we would be to lose them. So I will ask you to respond to this, and I'll speak to you again next time when I have another poem. Good day.